everybody, and welcome to another episode of Death By, where contestants will earn reps for their arguments for a chance to stand on top of the podium pedestal. I am your host, Lauren Kalil. Whoever I decide has the best argument through the final round will earn 30 seconds to talk about a topic of their choosing. Before we get to today's episode, we want to thank our sponsors, Thirdsy. These guys are the real deal. If you need help getting to sleep faster, staying asleep, or just want some of those extra supplements that you might already be taking, this stuff is a game changer. I'm getting ready to cover all the semifinals and their travel packs. Those are the first thing to go in my suitcase. I love this stuff, especially because it is melatonin free, so it's non-habit forming. You can take it every single night and just add it as part of your routine. It's got collagen, magnesium, GABA, and L-theanine, all of that in that sweet beverage before I go to bed. If you want to try out Thirdsy, you can improve your sleep too. Just go to thirdsy.com. That's THIRDZY.com, and you're going to use code DEATHBY at checkout to save 20%. Now we are going to get into today's episode. And first we have two-time Affiliate Cup champion and seminar staff head coach, James Hobart, the co-owner and athlete agent, Lab Management, Cooper Marsh. Welcome to the show. First timer here. We'll see how he fares. And our very own sports analyst, Tommy Marquez. And let's play Death By. CrossFit recently announced this year's worldwide ranking system along with games qualifying spots. Now, without notice, the equation of the worldwide ranking system was adjusted, impacting Europe and North America West to receive less game spot, and then Oceania, Asia, and South America received more. So our question is this a cause for alarm, or is this just part of the growing pains of still a new process? We are going to start round number one with Tommy Marquez.
Oof. All right. Well, let it be known I am filling in for Tim Paulson, so you can basically take all of my words and attribute them to him. Honestly, I'm kind of alarmed by this. This is, I think, could set a dangerous precedent of significant changes that affect representation globally being made without really anyone knowing about it, or it being necessarily above board in terms of kind of preceding this season with this type of information that affects people's livelihoods. Really, if you think about this in other sports, imagine if a sport like golf or tennis or anything that uses rankings in order to provide opportunities for athletes. Imagine if the season started and we were just before maybe the race for the FedEx Cup, if we're in golf, and suddenly they decided, you know what, how we're going to allocate spots and points, we're going to switch, and we weren't going to tell you about it. You would have lawsuits, you would have boycotts, you would have athlete organizations up in arms, and it just doesn't set a good precedent for good faith processes in the future, I think. And I think CrossFit really wants to try and do what's best. They have to include the athletes, important players in this decision-making process, because you can't tell me that, shifting the weight and balance of power globally for athlete representation at the games, the highest earning potential that there is in the sport, without telling anybody is a good idea.
3 points for Tommy. Cooper, you deal with athletes. You deal with a lot of games athletes, semifinals athletes. What has the conversation been like? And do you think that this is cause for alarm or just growing pains?
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I agree with a lot of what Tommy said, but I'm going to say growing pains because I think the concept of having worldwide rankings and that informing how many spots the region gets to be able to send to the games allows us to go on the right path to be able to find the fittest. Because at the end of the day, we want representation in the sport worldwide, but still the goal is to find the fittest. And so if the fittest does not have if the fittest isn't coming from Asia or something like that, then so be it, right? You need to be able to get the strongest field there. And so I think it's growing pains. I think it makes sense to exclude the people when they made those that aren't competing, when they made that decision. granted, it was last minute, so that's the growing pain. But I feel like what it should have been is people that were a little bit more relevant. So instead of the top 100 being the ones that they looked at, make it more like the top 50 or the people that are actually going to be competing at said semifinals. That way, we aren't coming into a situation where regions that don't seem to deserve the extra spots are getting them, thus snuffing out the ability to find the fittest, because there are people that would easily qualify in other places, i.e. Europe, being reduced by a spot. So definitely growing pains, I think.
Okay. 3 points for Cooper. James?
I'm so glad I get to go last in this one.
You want to hear their answers first?
Oh my God, I needed it so much. I kind of fall into the camp, surprise, surprise. I think this is a growing pains piece. And the reason I say that is because I do think we need to find a way to judge proportional representation at the games successfully. I think I probably, if I was emperor of the universe, I would probably only have I don't know. I would just pick me. I'd be just the decider, be like, you get to go and you don't get to go, and not a spot for everybody. I know in the past we've used this argument that we should continue to give spots to these areas of the world that are growing in terms of CrossFit popularity and representation in order to continue to incentivize growth there. But I do think we need to find a way to always get the fittest people there. I think the method they're using now is a step in the right direction. I don't know what the perfect solution looks like. This is kind of a non-answer, but I still feel like it's a growing pains piece because we have seen continued changes to the season year over year, and we can argue about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing elsewhere. But I think we've seen changes to this season kind of again, especially from what it's looked like in the past. So how we get people to the games and how many people get there also needs to change with it, unfortunately.
It was a little bit more than when you actually give a non-answer. So I'll give you 2 points for that one, James. When we talk about systems and how long does something need to be in place before we can't really use the term growing pains and there actually should be change and adjustments made?
I mean, I can jump in here. If it really kind of depends, right? Like one of the biggest issues is that we haven't actually let anything marinate. And if you go by CrossFit's own stated words last season, when they initially rolled out the worldwide ranking system, which I agree with everyone else here is a good thing and something that can move us in the right direction, the party line was, hey, let's let this system sit for a little while. Let it go through its natural iterations of processing, and then we'll be able to get better information from that. We're basically a year in, and now, or not even a year in, and we're already adjusting one of the more significant aspects of this. We're going against the own word stated of letting it marinate, and we're changing it. Now, can you argue that maybe the changes are for better? That's not less what I'm concerned with, because I do think refining the process ultimately will get us to a better place. I'm more concerned about the lack of communication and the decisions made behind closed doors without the inclusion of the other stakeholders to take some words right out of CrossFit's mouth. That's the bigger issue for me. That's what the cause for alarm is.
With a heads up on the change of the equation, if they gave us, a month's notice, or maybe even when the rule book was finalized in the first version, I think back around the holidays, would that have changed the results in any way? Like, I know we keep talking about wanting transparency, but would that have made anything different for anybody? I
think it would hold people accountable, right? So that they would feel read in. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we're such a small sport, right? And we're a small sport, 100% what Tommy said. Like, we haven't had consistency enough to even let things marinate. It's kind of always just flash in the pan and then just like turn and burn, do something new. But then at the same time, right, like you look at any other traditional sport league, they've been around for over 100 years, and CrossFit's been around for whatever 10 to 15. So I think the community is still just so small that they feel like they are part of that decision, and then there's people that need to be held accountable to that. And so I think if they feel read in, then there's a lot less blowback. There's always going to be blowback, but there'd be a lot less.
Okay, let's get in now to Topic number 2 for today. North America East, West, and Europe will host a live stream for Saturday and Sunday showing every single heat. And Friday will not have a live stream, but instead a semifinals kickoff show on the CrossFit Games podcast. This or that, you have to choose one or the other. Only live streaming the final 2 heats, but for all 3 days, or keeping the viewing experience exactly how it is. We will let Cooper start this round.
Yeah, I would go with all heats, no Friday. The reason being, I get that people want to watch everything, right? And you're probably sitting there Friday at 1 p.m. and you're kind of bored and you want to watch. But first event is not going to be exactly viewer friendly. You have a bunch of different venues. It's tough to set up an outdoor run to begin with and have consistency in your, route, and then also be able to film that in something where it's not as controlled of an environment. The games, when they do a run outside, they can control it. They can have drones and they can get, footage from there. But 1, not very viewer friendly. 2, I think you need to showcase the community, right? I know that there are athletes there that are not going to go to the games and never will, but those athletes that earn their ticket for being top 40, deserve every right to be on the screen and have their friends and family cheer them on from afar, because, it's expensive to get to Knoxville or maybe to come to LA. So, those people need their screen time and they deserve it. And so I think Saturday and Sunday, they will get that opportunity, as will those top dogs. And you'll be able to watch the show there. And then my third point is it's a business, and streaming and live streaming super expensive. I'm grateful that they at least have that going. Obviously, I'd prefer it all 3 days, but right now you got to stay in the black on your P&L, and we can't be, a whole another third day is probably thousands more dollars to make that happen. So businesses got to make business decisions.
Got to treat it as a business. 3 points for Cooper. Let's move to James. This or that. Which one are you picking?
Man, I really like Cooper's answer for a lot of reasons. And I guess I'm going to go way out there, and I'm going to say, why are we still live streaming teams at semifinals? I don't know. For me, I think for this sport to grow, and what makes it so exciting at this stage of my washed up career to watch, is the individuals. I would like to see as much of the individuals as possible. And I would like to only see individuals at semifinals. Maybe there's one, cool 2-minute highlight reel of what's happened with the team so far. And then they live stream one really exciting team event that's easy to follow, short, super electric in terms of the event and how it's laid out. So that's where I stand with this. I get it. The first workout, probably not going to be that fun to watch for a lot of reasons. So I think the format they have now is fine. I want to drive even more to, let's just watch the individuals. That's who we're really here to see. No offense, teams. You guys made my CrossFit career, and I love you. For me now at this point, the individuals are the most exciting part.
So stream all day is just individuals, no teams at all.
Get them out of there.
James, I like a hot take. I'm going to give you 4 points for that.
Yes.
When I can get you to jump all the way over to a side that I didn't even know was created on this show, that's a good day for everyone. Tommy, where do you lay in this line on the traffic? Where can we find you?
I think I'm going to be a happy marriage here. So, if Cooper is tennis and James is table tennis, I'm going to be pickleball. I'm going to fit right in the middle and appeal to everybody, because if I had to pick between just those two, I would go all heats and no Friday. But I think the future of the sport could be a combination of both. I think if with this new iteration of the CrossFit Games podcast that they're trying to do, which is more of a dressed up version of what we saw last year, I think there's a world where both can exist, where you can still stream all of them in a different style of platform, while still having a made for TV type broadcast that features the top heats of the individuals. Now, I think if it's successful and you're able to push people successfully into both spots, you can have I would say a more rudimentary broadcast that is live streaming with some fun second screen options, very similar to what Rogue did at the Invitational, having more laid back commentary scene, almost very much what the ESPN does for the college football national championships, where they have a coach's room, they have an SEC room, they have all these different conference rooms that is focused around the region specific people and people of interest with the same stream, the same look, just super chill. And then have something that you can package in those final two heats of individuals like James wants to see. Package that for something that goes on a CBS, that is that broadcast level caliber quantity. And you're not paying for a full day of truck. You're not paying for a full day of people manning the broadcast cameras. And you can actually still save that money. And you're turning it into something that you can get a contract and sell to a network long term. To me, that's the win-win. You give both the lower tier content in terms of it's more accessible to everybody, and then you have something that is clearly primetime watching and that is dressed up to look accordingly. That's what can grow the sport.
I like that. Thinking of growing the sport, 3 points for Tommy. When we talk about it, it's almost like a buzzword now is how can we professionalize the sport? And that's what's on top of a lot of people's minds. Cooper brought up the opportunity to showcase more athletes. And I'm curious if something like semifinals showing the earlier heats does in fact translate to sponsorship opportunities or more financial opportunities for athletes. Is that something that we are actually seeing?
I mean, yes, and I'm going to save some of that for the next question.
Okay. It's going to hold his tongue.
Smart strategy.
Cooper and Tommy, are you in agreement with James that it would move the needle more if we only showcased individuals rather than individuals and teams?
I mean, my personal interest is individuals too. So I totally get that. I think the teams are exciting, but even when they're exciting, I'm still not completely I'm just more focused on individuals. I think the team thing, there still needs to be some type of it's almost there. It just hasn't found its mojo yet, I think.
Yeah, I would say that this is why I think like that 2-tiered system is important, because if you think about and it's always tough to, you can't just completely cater to them, but you think about the friends and family crowd, right? The people that want to tune in solely because they know someone that's competing. It's exponentially higher, 4x or not quite 4x higher because of the athletes that show up for the team division. So how can we make sure that the affiliate base that is supporting these teams, because let's be honest, it's the team is more representative of the affiliate community because of who's actually competing in it. It's not necessarily the superstars across the board. How can we give them an opportunity to still view the people that they support and train with every day? So that's why I think you could easily put them on the second tier of that and not necessarily have to show all the dressed up stuff.
When we think about when CrossFit announced that there would be no live stream for Friday and how close that is to the actual semifinals, I have no idea what ticket sales look like for events, but if we know what the process of getting butts and seats has been over the course of the last couple of years, it's not an easy task. And I'm wondering if the community knew that there was going to be no live stream on Friday months prior, would that have driven more ticket sales to the larger community, or does that not move the needle enough?
I don't think so. James, go for it. I can tell you more. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have a lot to say on this, but it's like, is it possible to just do this competition Saturday, Sunday? And the reason I say that is because I've seen a lot of semifinals, regionals, whatever we named them throughout the years. And, for obvious reasons, I think the most people go on Saturdays and Sundays and Fridays, despite, who's competing, at least this is just me thinking off memory, what the event is. Lowest attendance because it's a Friday. Maybe people are traveling to get there. Maybe it's a work day for a lot of people. I just wonder is there an opportunity for us to condense this to 2 days, still make it an effective test? And again, if it was only individuals, it'd be really easy to do that. And just build some, again, electricity around it. For me, that's sort of how I think about this problem. But, I don't know why we still have midweek comps.
Yeah. And I also just think, it's if you were to tell the community way in advance, it's are they still going to then all of a sudden decide to fork out a few $1,000s to make this happen? Because, getting to some of these places is not an easy feat. You got to fly to Nashville and then you got to rent a car and you got to drive to Knoxville, or you got to take the higher ticket price to fly into Knoxville. And I love Knoxville. I think it's an awesome place for an event. But I don't know if that would necessarily have swayed people to then pull the trigger and, take off, because in reality, they would only be getting one extra event. So they're only missing one event, right? They're still getting a bulk of it Saturday, Sunday, which I was surprised by. I thought it would be 2, 2, and 2. The fact that it's 1, 2, and 3, kind of harks more to James's point, where I'm like, well, then these guys are animals, man. You might as well just tack one on Saturday morning and just go, 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., and it's a 9 to 5, right? They're back in bed, chilling out and recovering by 6 p.m., and do it for 2 days because they can handle it. They do 4 to 5 events at the games in a day. So for multiple days. So maybe that's the play, right? And it would be more economical. You'd save money, and you might fire people up. But, this is a tangent, but some of us were talking, me and Daniel Robbins, one of my partners, in lab, it was like, man, those regional days were so good because they were spread out a little bit more, right? Which was, and it was on CrossFit Games books, right? So their overhead costs took a hit there, and that's tough because, once again, it's a business thing. But when you had a central regional and an east regional and a southeast, right, or whatever, it was more accessible because people were able to drive, 3, maybe 4 hours, or they lived closer. They didn't have to fly in, right? And the cities were usually ones that had affordable hotels, things like that. And you were able to get a bunch of people there and get some excitement around it because, there wasn't a ton of planning and there wasn't a ton of, overhead costs to be able to get to the venue, even if it was to just watch for a day. I remember going to the Northeast regionals in Canton at Reebok, and, it being packed on Saturday, Sunday, right? Even the East regional in Albany, because everybody in New England could just drive there. You didn't have to fly. Mm-hmm. And so I just feel like those kind of, it'd be almost, of course, it'd be a change to the season again. But if you were able to go back to some of those things and put some more central locations, I think that's the recipe of success, to be able to pull your people in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I generally agree with both of those. I also think that there's a secondary and I guess tertiary benefits of them communicating that stuff ahead of time, right? Is like rebuilding trust in the brand to communicate effectively. And when ultimately, like, if you think about, if suddenly CrossFit starts communicating everything openly and is very transparent about it, when they try to do things like promote these events and stuff like that, people aren't rolling their eyes or turning their brains off. At the same time, maybe a condensed, more individual format actually is a better indication of like, hey, how are they going to hold up over, intense volume at the games? If you are able to do 6 workouts in a more condensed format and handle that volume pretty well and perform at a high, is that a better prep for the games? I don't know necessarily, but it's certainly worth investigating. And if you're thinking of packaging, one day down the line, if you're like, hey, we want to build this back up eventually and stop divesting from this, can we package up 7-8 weekend competitions for a network partner? Is that more attractive than a 3-day on a Friday where there's empty stands? Those are all things to consider.
All right, let's move now into topic number 3, as we are all tied up heading into the last and final round. Africa, Asia, and South America semifinals. They will be live streaming all 3 days, but without a quote, what we would call a professional broadcast. It's still yet to see exactly what those are going to look like. So does it matter what the live stream actually looks like? We will start our last round with James Hobart.
Oh, man. I do think it matters what the live stream looks like. And I think part of that is because I think there has been historically, for a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to dive into those. Tommy already spoke to some of them. Cooper spoke to some of them. A lot of them to do with finances, running a business, just the production, getting production in country, in different places. But I think it matters because historically we've had moments where we've had like really great live stream coverage, or like just this really like incredible engaging media coverage. And that has changed as the season has changed and the structure has changed. And so I think an expectation has set, and sometimes that sets up an opportunity to let those expectations down. What it seems to be the challenge right now is, as we continue to change the seasons or the structure, is that how do we allocate resources appropriately to highlight some of these stories? And I joke, but how do we highlight the people showing up who have worked hard, whether they be team or individual? So for me, I think this one is just not, it's a hard place to be because there's an expectation for a better live stream. And in some cases, it's not always as great as people want it. So they think it's like they're taking it as like a poo-poo to this place when I don't think that's the case. Instead, we're trying to, how do we build new momentum to get better coverage in the future? But unfortunately, the precedent from the past probably is going to let some people down.
Okay. 3 points for James. Tommy.
I think it absolutely matters what it looks like. If you're going to try and ultimately grow this and push this as a global sport, then how it looks on a global scale is certainly going to matter, particularly when you're going to make changes to a worldwide ranking system that allocates more spots to regions that aren't necessarily having their live streams run by CrossFit. So you're going to tell me that there's not going to be some effect down the line when Oceania gets more spots. People tune into Torian Pro. It looks like a professional live stream. It looks awesome. They have a crew that's been running that same event and those types of caliber broadcasts for a decade plus now. And then then the rest of the community is going to turn into maybe Africa or Asia, not saying what their event is going to look like, but based on years past. And there's a clear discrepancy between the two. It doesn't seem like it's going to fit cohesively in a season, or even in the zeitgeist of people discussing whether or not we should actually be allocating resources to these places. And that's tough, right? Like, because I think those people from those regions want to feel pride in their region and as an up and comer in the sport, support their athletes, support the gyms and all those things. But what they have to show to the world then certainly matters. And if there's a way that we can figure out to better allocate resources, so at a minimum there's a decent broadcast, great. But it's right now we just don't know, right? Because there's been no communication around what exactly it's going to look like, and you'd have to maybe go to those events independently to ask them, hey, what kind of broadcast are you going to have? Are you bootstrapping this? Do you have funding behind this? Do you have sponsors that support? And all those are valuable questions that we shouldn't have to be asking 2 days before semifinals start. So yeah, it certainly matters. And I think it's something that should be addressed moving forward.
4 points for Tommy. Cooper, I know you've been sitting on a lot of things you want to talk about. You're up.
Yeah, just looking at it from a manager's perspective, yes, 100% matters. I think the biggest thing with the CrossFit Games, right, and going back to Greg Glassman days, is that he didn't really care for it, right? He cared about the CrossFit health side of things, whereas the Games was, really just a loss leader. I think the biggest thing is it's the touch point, right? It's the initial touch point that gets people into affiliates. That's why I think the CrossFit Games and the sport as a whole needs to be, invested into even more. And so I think as the initial kind of cold lead into potentially somebody walking into a CrossFit gym, if you come across the CrossFit Games and it's, the Asian or South American, right, or the African region or whatever, and the live stream is trash, you're going to turn somebody off immediately, right? Like, and on the flip side of that, if you want to be seen as a professional and legitimate sport, those live streams absolutely matter, because if you're a brand and you look in and you see that, you're going to be like, I'm not going to invest money into this space. This is archaic, right? And we need that money in the ecosystem to be able to grow things in those high tides that rise all ships. So just looking at it from like a managing standpoint, it looks, bad for brands. It looks bad for newcomers into the space and people walking into affiliates. It also doesn't help athletes build their brands, right? They're not able to even, if you field something on a potato phone and you get a potato, view, you're not going to be able to know who the person is who won the heat that you want to now identify and be excited about as they go to the CrossFit Games. So, potato phone live stream equals bland results. Not good for the sport, not good for CrossFit as a whole. And my suggestion is combine Asia and Africa, end this nightmare and, outsource and have Torian Pro run it because they know what they're doing. Or, just combine Asia, Australia, Africa, or whatever. Just put them all in one thing, give them more spots, get hyped about it, have an awesome live stream and a bunch of people in your stands.
Ooh, I kind of like that idea. 5 points for Coop, but how would you then? It is possible. I think Chase Ingram is the only one that's gotten 5 points before, but so now you can tell him your first time you got 5 points. How would you then decide where the location for that semifinals would be?
I mean,
Tommy, rotating in the year, Tommy?
Rotating, absolutely.
Oh, that'd be sick.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. It would bring excitement, right? Like, I think this is something that maybe is a little bit more foreign to the United States than necessarily the rest of the world, who is very used to traveling internationally for events on a global scale, right? You think about how soccer hooligans travel and some of these other sports travel more frequently. The sheer size of the United States kind of prevents that sometimes. But imagine if you had like every 3 years or every couple of years, it's coming into your area, so your athletes per se have a home court advantage. I think that would be awesome. And by combining them, I love this idea, by the way. I think what we're missing sometimes is the underdog story, right? That we started to get when we included Latin America into the South region. That it became a really big story when a Latin American team from Argentina, Big Friends team, qualified for the games as the first Latin America qualifier in the combined region format. They showed out for them. And then they went on to finish top 20 at the games as a team. And that was like unheard of. So you get these really cool storylines that get born from this, what looks like a little bit of adversity at the front. I think that would be great.
And dude, 100% on the underdog storyline, because I think it remedies the fact of, you have people that deserve more spots, right? For example, like the Australian men, right? Right now, I don't think the Australian women deserve the 4 spots, especially this year with everybody out. But if you put them all together and you give them the more spots, right, it kind of mitigates that, because if Australians truly are like, if they deserve that, then they're going to go get them, right? But then if you are somebody, coming from China and you show out and you nab that last spot, like, you get to carry the pride of your country on your back, and people will rally around that. And it's sick. It's how you build brands, right? And if you look at like, PGA Tour or something like that, when John Rahm won at the Masters, it was the first Spanish dude to win in a long time. And it was huge, right? And it's like, the dude was already the number 1 world player, but it's like, then he was like creating this entire new storyline that you identified with. And next thing you know, you're like, F it, dude, vamos. Like, like we got somebody new coming in here and putting it down for Spain or whatever. It's like whoever wins on tour, it's the first Canadian dude to win at the Canadian event forever, right? And it just means so much to those people. And so I think if you put those people in the situations where the platform is bigger and they're able to get the representation in front of a lot of eyeballs, then when they go, the place is going to, melt down with excitement. So.
And one last note on like the live stream mattering, just to kind of tie it back. The early days of regionals CrossFit, starting in 2013 when we streamed every heat of every regional across the board. The first 2 years were just recaps that we would produce. There was a very clear messaging around that, and that I got to experience firsthand. It was, hey, we're trying to grow the sport. We are trying to build this into a property that, even though it may lose money at first, could become a huge windfall financially for us in a good way later on down the line. So we're going to showcase all of these developing regions across the board in a equal or a bare minimum manner that's up to our standard. We're going to use that for reps to develop a season that makes sense. And ultimately, that's going to be the goal of getting that really big TV contract that is usually the boon for most sports in a very big way. That is the difference from a niche sport going into a much bigger sport with money, brands, and sponsors. Because once you have that TV deal and you're guaranteed to be in so many homes, not just in the United States, but with all the international broadcast partners that get pumped into every corner of the world, then that starts to be the rocket ship that can help you take off. And that was communicated very, very, very distinctly for us years on end. It's why we developed a studio. It's why we did round the clock coverage. It's why people were Marston Sawyers was out filming in random places in Latin America. It's all part of that. And it may look like a loss leader at first, but if it's communicated correctly, it can be turned into something. And it was on the table for CrossFit before everything changed.
But where is that line between people just want to consume content and they just want to watch the sport to, hey, we need to shoot this on something better than, and it's not even the iPhone. The iPhones have some great cameras, but the internet connection makes it look like a potato, as Cooper was saying. So where is that line between, people just want to consume content versus, we got to do better than this if we want to grow the sport?
It's
the line it's always moving. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It needs to go back to what Tommy was just talking about, man. Like, or just be brought, like, just updated, right? Maybe that was CrossFit 1.0 and needs to be CrossFit 6.0 now. But I mean, dude, 100%. I used to consume the hell out of everything Tommy and Sean produced, and it was so well done, and that was the trajectory that I think was the most impactful. And you could tell, right? Because year over year, the growth just kept going because of the groundwork that they laid, and they stuck to the plan, right? Like, and so I just think it's one of those things where it's got to come back to some assembly like that, or some semblance, because right now it feels like the CrossFit media space and the sport as a whole is almost like it used to be cable television, where it made sense and you just like went through and consumed what you wanted. And, you know, maybe you purchased HBO, et cetera. You had the in-depth things like the better streams, right, that Tommy talked about. But now it's piecemealed out, right? And you have different camps, you know, fighting for their viewership. And it's all just the apps, right, that all start to kind of combine and come back together. So ideally, maybe we'll just get cable television again, which we all probably are cool with, like, instead of having to pay for 30 subscriptions.
Yeah.
Well, because everybody's not only fighting for the same views, but everybody's also fighting for the very few sponsors that we have within not just the CrossFit, but the fitness ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's a chicken or the egg problem, though, right? Like the pickings for sponsors becomes slimmer because when there's less reliable viewership and audience, because people are being turned off by this like scattered nature of media. If there's a cohesive message and there is someone that's willing to lead from the front, then I think everyone gets the benefit of drafting from that position, because I don't think fulfilling a desire to just consume content and then creating content at a high quality are mutually exclusive, like, and they shouldn't be, because if you do so at a high quality, you're still appeasing everyone. You're still feeding those people that'll just eat whatever. But there are some people that are like, at some point, like when 4K cameras on your phone become, ubiquitous, then shooting on a potato with poor internet becomes off-putting at some point. I mean, you can see a great example of like is the golf world right now. The golf world is going through this huge content creation transition, right? You had the PGA Tour, which essentially had a monopoly forever. They've been embroiled in a battle with Liv and the public investment fund. And now, as a result, you have all of these golfers that are up and coming and content creators that are producing content at a high level now, and are doing so in a very relatable way with that regular streaming cadence you would expect from like a YouTube social media influencer. And now they're getting the best of both. And even though you can't necessarily say that people are tuning into the Golf Channel as much, there are more people consuming golf content, and brands like TaylorMade, Titleist, Callaway, even upstart direct-to-consumer brands like Styx or Maltby or Tacoma are seeing a huge boon and a huge successful upswing in their business. And those are the effects that actually happen.
And they're partnering with said content creators over, right? They're taking factory deals to those guys as opposed to dudes that are actually on tour, which is ruffling some feathers too. So super interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Tommy, you know your golf, man. You're legit.
I like to sing every once in a while.
3 golf fans on one call right now. Who would have thought?
Right? Damn, dude. So
a lot of really great conversations today, but guess what, Coop? You are the champion of this week's Death By. So you will now earn 30 seconds to talk about whatever you would like.
Homer, come here. I was just going to show you guys my dog. Yeah. Homer, come here. Get up. He's just sleeping in front of me. Honestly, I don't really have much besides the fact that, like, before we got on the call, we talked about, how divisive it can be in this space, because everybody's kind of fighting to secure their fiefdom or whatever. So I would just say, let's all, continue to collaborate and work together to try to grow this thing that we know can be successful, because it has been in the past. And the powers that be, I hope that you guys hear and recognize the talent and the hustle that a lot of people are doing, out of their own wallet and time to make this grow, and, allow those people to, bring success to the sport, because it's not just it's a high tides rise all ships, and if we all row in the right direction, then we'll be good to go. So be nice to each other, and I'll see you guys at semifinals.
I love it. Those were very wise words to end on, Coop.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys having me. I'm freezing in here. My AC is way too.
Double boat analogy back to back. I love it.
Dude.
No.
I know. I'm like, that's just like it's a saying, dude. I'm like, I need to get a new one. If anybody has suggestions, please.
It works. It works. Cooper Marsh, thank you so much for being on the show. Congratulations. Tommy Marquez, thanks for jumping in last minute for Tim Paulson.
Crushed it.
We'll see him back in a couple of weeks. And thanks again to our sponsors, Thirdzy. We hope that everybody enjoys the next 3 weeks of semifinals. We will have complete coverage, Instagram, YouTube, podcast, all the channels. And myself and Tommy will be at a couple of different ones. Cooper, you'll be east
and west.
East and west. Okay.
So
Then we will see y'all all in person. Come and say hello, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you guys.